The news from Budapest was nothing short of seismic, sending shockwaves not just through Hungary but across the entire continent. It hit Brussels like a thunderclap, catching even seasoned diplomats off guard and leaving policymakers scrambling for answers. Hungary's government, led by Viktor Orbán, announced it would pursue a strategic partnership with the BRICS nations: China, Russia, India, and Brazil. This was more than just a diplomatic gesture. It was a bold declaration that Hungary was ready to chart a new course on the world stage. For the European Union, this move felt like a deep betrayal. Hungary had been a symbol of post-Cold War integration, a country that embraced the Western alliance after decades behind the Iron Curtain. Now, it seemed to be turning its back on the very institutions that had welcomed it. As a member of both the EU and NATO, Hungary is deeply woven into the fabric of Western economic and security systems. Its businesses, military, and even its culture have been shaped by these alliances for over a generation. For such a country to openly court a bloc often seen as a counterweight to the West was almost unthinkable. The announcement raised questions about Hungary's true intentions and its future place in Europe. European leaders scrambled to respond, holding emergency meetings and issuing statements. Was this a genuine realignment of Hungary's foreign policy, or simply a high-stakes bargaining tactic to gain leverage within the EU? The move was quickly framed as a direct challenge to the post-Cold War order that has defined Europe for decades. It signaled that the old lines between East and West were blurring and that new alliances might be forming in their place. For ordinary Hungarians, the implications were vast and confusing. Some wondered if this new direction would bring economic prosperity and new opportunities, while others feared it could isolate the country and strain relationships with its closest allies. The old certainties of East and West are dissolving before everyone's eyes. Hungary now finds itself at the very center of a new unpredictable era, one where the choices it makes could reshape not just its own future, but the future of Europe itself. To truly understand Hungary's recent foreign policy shift, it's essential to look closely at Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, a leader who has consistently challenged the status quo in Europe. Orbán's vision for Hungary is rooted in a desire for greater independence and influence on the world stage. Central to this vision is his Eastern opening policy, a strategic move that marks a significant departure from Hungary's traditional Western alliances. Orbán argues that the era of Western dominance is drawing to a close. In his view, a new multipolar world is emerging, one where power is distributed among several influential nations, not just the United States and Western Europe. He believes that for Hungary to thrive, it must actively build bridges to rising powers like China and India. This means not only maintaining ties with the EU and the US, but also seeking new partnerships that can bring economic growth and technological advancement. Orbán frames this approach as pragmatic and forward-thinking. By diversifying Hungary's alliances and attracting investment from a broader range of countries, he aims to secure the nation's future prosperity and reduce its vulnerability to external pressures. At home, Orbán promotes what he calls illiberal democracy, emphasizing national sovereignty and traditional values over the liberal ideals often championed by the West. This stance resonates with many Hungarians who feel their identity and autonomy are under threat. According to Orbán, the East offers economic opportunity and respect for Hungary's choices, without the constant criticism on issues like human rights that often comes from Western partners. He insists that this pivot is not about turning away from the West, but about expanding Hungary's options and ensuring it is not overly dependent on any single bloc. Supporters of Orbán see this as a clever and necessary strategy for a small nation in a turbulent world. However, critics warn that by courting new powers, Hungary may simply be exchanging one form of dependency for another, risking its democratic values in the process. In a rapidly changing global landscape, Orbán's ultimate goal is clear. He wants Hungary to be free to choose its own path, independent and resilient, no matter which way the winds of global power may shift. Hungary's history is one of survival at the crossroads of empires, caught between East and West for centuries. The traumas of lost territory, Nazi occupation, and Soviet rule have left deep scars. Joining the EU and NATO was once seen as the ultimate guarantee of sovereignty, but suspicion of outside control runs deep. Many Hungarians now see Brussels as another overbearing power, echoing past empires. Orbán taps into this narrative, framing his policies as a defense of national independence. The appeal of a multipolar policy is clear. never again be at the mercy of a single bloc. By balancing East and West, Hungary seeks to maximize its freedom. It's a modern echo of an old survival strategy. Hungary's eastern opening is visible in steel and concrete. The Budapest-Belgrade Railway, funded by Chinese loans, aims to make Hungary a key logistics hub for Chinese goods entering Europe. In Debrecen, Chinese battery giant KTL is building a massive gigafactory, one of Hungary's largest ever foreign investments. Other Chinese firms are setting up factories for electric cars and electronics. Chinese banks are opening branches in Budapest, and Fudan University plans a European campus there. The government touts these projects as proof that the East delivers jobs, technology, and development. They argue that while Brussels debates, China invests. For Orban, these deals are a masterstroke, plugging Hungary into the world's most dynamic economy. Critics, however, question the long-term costs. Still, the evidence of Chinese partnership is tangible and politically powerful. Not everyone is convinced by Hungary's bet on China. While the government touts the benefits of closer ties, a growing number of Hungarians are taking to the streets, voicing their concerns about what this partnership could mean for the country's future. The protests reflect a deep unease about the direction Hungary is heading, and whether the promises of prosperity will come at too high a price. Critics warn that massive Chinese loans like those for the Budapest-Belgrade Railway could trap Hungary in a cycle of debt, making it increasingly dependent on Beijing's financial support. They point to similar projects in other countries where unsustainable debt has led to the loss of strategic assets or forced governments to make political concessions that favor China's interests. These critics argue that by relying so heavily on Chinese capital, Hungary risks swapping one form of foreign influence for another. Instead of gaining true independence, the country could find itself beholden to a new, more powerful partner, one whose values and interests may not align with those of the Hungarian people. Many of these deals are shrouded in secrecy, with non-competitive tenders and little public oversight. This lack of transparency has raised fears of corruption and backroom deals that benefit a select few, rather than the broader Hungarian society. Critics worry that the public is being kept in the dark about the true costs and long-term consequences of these agreements. There are also growing concerns that China's influence could erode Hungary's democracy. Unlike the European Union, Beijing does not demand reforms on press freedom, judicial independence, or minority rights as a condition for investment. This has led some to fear that democratic norms could be undermined, and that Hungary's hard-won freedoms may be at risk. The planned Fudan University campus in Budapest is seen by some as a Trojan horse for Chinese influence, a way for Beijing to extend its soft power and shape the next generation of Hungarian leaders. Opponents argue that the university could become a hub for Chinese propaganda and surveillance, further entrenching China's presence in the heart of Europe. The government, however, insists that it can accept Chinese investment without sacrificing Hungary's sovereignty. Officials claim that these deals are necessary for economic growth and modernization, and that Hungary will remain firmly in control of its own destiny. But for many critics, this is a dangerous gamble. They see the growing reliance on China as a threat to Hungary's independence and democratic foundations, warning that the country could become a pawn in a larger geopolitical struggle between East and West. At the heart of the debate is a central question. Can Hungary truly prosper as a bridge between East and West, reaping the benefits of both, or will it ultimately become beholden to an authoritarian partner whose interests may not align with its own? The stakes are high, and the outcome remains uncertain. As Hungary stands at this crossroads, the choices made today will shape the nation's future for generations to come. Hungary's pivot to the east has split society. Many outside Budapest support Orban, seeing him as a defender of national interests and a creator of jobs. Government-aligned media reinforce the narrative the West lectures, the East invests. For these Hungarians, the Eastern opening is patriotic and pragmatic. But in Budapest and among the young and educated, opposition is fierce. Protests have erupted against projects like the Fudan campus, seen as selling out to authoritarianism. Critics fear corruption, debt, and the erosion of democracy. They see Hungary's future in the EU, not in the arms of China. The divide is deep, visible in families, media, and politics. It's a fundamental disagreement about Hungary's identity and future. The nation is split between pride in sovereignty and fear of isolation. Hungary's move is part of a global shift away from US-led unipolarity. China is building a network of partners through the Belt and Road, challenging Western dominance. The BRICS group is expanding, giving non-Western powers a greater voice. Hungary is the first EU member to openly align with this alternative vision. Other countries watching closely are also seeking to balance ties between East and West. Hungary's strategic promiscuity could become a model if it succeeds. The old Cold War lines are blurring. NATO members use Chinese tech, EU countries take Chinese loans. Economic interests now often trump political alliances. Hungary's story is a microcosm of the messy, multipolar world emerging today. The world is watching to see if this gamble pays off. Hungary's pivot challenges the EU's unity and values. The EU has withheld funds over rule of law concerns, but this can fuel anti-EU sentiment and push Hungary closer to China. The nuclear option, suspending Hungary's voting rights, requires unanimity and risks deepening divisions. The EU's consensus model makes disciplining a rogue member difficult. Hungary's actions force the EU to ask, is it an economic club or a union of shared values? If the EU fails to act, it risks looking powerless and encouraging others to follow Hungary's path. The bloc's global influence and cohesion are at stake. Hungary's gamble is a stress test for the European project. The outcome will shape the EU's future. The stakes for Europe are as high as for Hungary itself. As of September 2025, Hungary stands at a crossroads. Orban's Eastern gamble is in full swing, with Chinese-funded projects rising and diplomatic ties deepening. The government bets on prosperity and sovereignty by balancing East and West. The coming years will test whether this strategy brings growth or debt, influence or isolation. For the EU, Hungary's path will set a precedent for handling internal dissent in a multipolar world. The unity and strength of Europe may be forged or fractured by its response. Hungary's story is an experiment in geopolitics with high risks and rewards. The choices of this small nation could reshape alliances and power dynamics across the continent. The world is watching to see how Hungary's great gamble unfolds.